Okie dokie. Right, so we've got an empty map, absolutely nothing in it. It's completely bog standard, totally fresh. And as usual, we're starting off in the airfield. Then the first thing you're going to want to do is drop down a player, because without that, you can't test anything. You generally just put a player down. Maybe that's just from the old editor. That's just my standard sort of first move of the game. So I'll just choose someone at random. Now this is going to be a single player situation. We're not going to build anything for multiplayer because it's a lot easier in single player. You don't have to think about locality and all that sort of stuff. So this is, like I said, just a training system ideally. So let's see, first thing to do is, once you've created something, you're going to want to save it, and we shall call it Heli training system. Cool. Now if you come out of this, now this may be different for others, but for me, if I go into documents, other profiles, my profile, and then in missions, you should find your folder, which I've just created, Heli training system. The .enoch is the map, so I don't know why it's Enoch. I would have thought it would have been .livonia, but if it was in Altis, it would be .altis and so on. So this at the moment is just an empty mission, and if you were to stay in this mission and build loads of triggers and systems, that would be fine. But what we're going to do is actually create separate files that live in the same place as the mission folder, and as the mission goes forward, we're going to use separate files to control what happens. And again, this is basic stuff, so there's probably much better ways of doing all this, but this is just absolutely bog standard basics. First thing I'm going to do though is, I'm not going to create any folders in here or files. I'm going to go back to the missions, and I'm going to open this folder with VS Code. Now VS Code, put in the comments if you've got any questions. You can use any editor. I'm just using VS Code because I love it. I think it's great. Has nice integration with Git. It's got a command line if you need that. It's got loads of plugins as well, so you can have like SQF plugins, which is useful. But anyway, if you look on the left here, you can see the folder, and then you can see the mission.sqm file. So a mission will always have an SQM file type, and then most of the other files are going to end in SQF. There's a couple of exceptions, but generally speaking it's SQF. So while I could go in here, in fact I will go in here and I'll create a new file. I'm going to create a new text document, rename it completely, and I'm going to call it init.sqf. And yes, I'm sure. Okay, now that's fine, but now if I go back into the code editor, I can see that new file that I just created here. But generally speaking, I won't be doing it that way. I'll be doing it in this system. So you've got a choice here. You can create a new file. Let's call it readme.md, and now you can type some notes or diaries or ideas or whatever you want. .md is just markdown. It's just, it will be ignored by the system, so you don't need to worry about that. That's just something you can use for notes really. But the key thing here is that when the mission starts, if there is a file called init.sqf, then anything in this file will be run. So to test that, we're just going to do a very basic hint hello Heli world. Now sorry guys, most people know this, but this is for absolute beginners. The hint is the command, and the command tells you that you need something as a string, which is a string is basically free text in quotation marks, and then you always need a semicolon at the end. So I'm going to Control S to save. Now if I go into my mission and if I play it, all being well, I'll see a hint at the top of the screen. And there you go, Heli World. Cool. Okay, so let's come back out of that. Now, why don't we... Actually, no, let's go back into the mission. Come out of the actual game itself, back into the editor. And because this is a heli mission, we're going to start off with a heli. So let's use something nice. Now, there's a lot of linking and synchronizing in the editor. You don't have to worry about that. I'm just going to hover over these characters here and delete them. Then I'm going to drag this character into the heli as a pilot. You can see the red circle that indicates that he will be the player that we are in when we start playing the game. And just to save time, I'm going to hold down Alt, click on the helicopter and just drag it up into the air. So when you start the mission, you'll start while flying, which is saves a bit of time really. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to select the player, I'm going to select the heli. Double click, I'm going to give it a name. Now that's useful because you're going to need to be able to refer to things in the scripts. So your script will refer to something called Heli1, and that will be this helicopter here. So cool. Okay, so come back into the code. Get rid of that. Now you could just chuck everything into init.sqf, but actually it makes a bit more sense in the long term if you think a bit about how you're going to structure things. And I know it's hard in the beginning, comes with a bit of experience, but generally speaking, you can, as you would naturally do with any system, put things into buckets or folders. So we'll create a folder, and we're going to call this, just call it test for now. And then within that, we'll create a new file, addActionTest.sqf. Now, when the init starts, I want to trigger whatever is in here. So to do that, and I know this is probably bad practice, but it will work. So I'm just going to do it this way. Exec VM test add action test.sqf. So when the mission starts, it will look in here, it will see that really just calls, or not technically, I'm not sure if it's calls or spawns, but it invokes this file here. I'll save this, and then here I'll just check that the plumbing works. Okay, so if we go back into the mission, play a single player, if everything works as expected, I'll still get a hint. And you can see there, top right of the screen, we're good. Right. Okay, so this is important. Next thing we want to do is have a look at the Arma database, which has basically documents all of the commands, how to use them. For me, it was difficult at first, and then when you get the hang of it, it's actually not only easy, it's invaluable. So we want to do an add action, which is basically like a scroll wheel action that gives you a choice of things. And what you can do is you can have an action that you access through a scroll wheel, and then it's actually just there. And then once you selected that, you can run whatever code you put in that script. So addAction takes you to the Bohemia interactive page, and this scary line here is the structure of that command. So let's take it one step at a time. Object, well, that's the thing that you want to put this system onto, and I'm going to put it onto the heli, because we might want to have different actions for different helis, possibly. You could put it on the player, but we're going to put it on the heli in this case. So here we'll say heli1, because that was the name of the object. addAction. Now if you hover over this, if you've got your plugins configured correctly, you'll get a nice helpful hint that basically gives you the same as the wiki. So you can see here you have an array that comes after addAction. So addAction needs an array. Where are we? Here. Now an array is just a list of things in square brackets, and you separate the things out with commas, and if you only need one thing, you put in the first thing only. If you need the first and the third thing, you put in first, second and third thing, and so on. So if you only need the last thing, say in an array, you have to put sort of zeros or nulls for every thing that precedes it. Sorry, that's probably quite confusing. Don't worry about that. Let's keep it super simple, and if you look down here, the examples are normally where it's at for me. So there is this one here. This is a good one. So we'll copy this and just plonk it down there. So here we can see the yellow brackets. Let me just zoom in. Yellow brackets are the extent of the array, and here's your semicolon at the end. In fact, we could actually just try this out. Let's see if this works. Okay, and you can see here we have a new addAction that does nothing. Just gives you a hint at the top, so red. You can see it's still lit. What we want is this to actually kill the engine. So let's work on that. I'm cool with the colour. So it's this stuff here we're interested in. The hint red, well that's code. Everything inside the curly brackets, that's code. So just stick that all on a new line. Now in here we want to turn the engine off, right? So let's see if we can find that in the wiki. Okay, engine on. Engine on false, probably. Okay, this is good. To switch engine off can use set fuel and fuel. That's exactly what we want actually. So let's copy this and we'll see what happens. A lot of this is trial and error, I'll be quite honest with you. So private gas, private, don't worry about that. It just means that this is known in different parts of the script. You can often get away without it, but because it's in the example, we'll use it. Now, this is a variable, and it's basically a small bucket of numbers or text or some useful thing. And what we're saying here in this line is that this little container contains the fuel of that's Heli 1, isn't it? Because that's our thing. That's the thing we're interested in getting, and we put that number, the amount of fuel in there, we put it in there as a number, and then we take the Heli 1 as a thing. We use the set fuel command. We set the number to 0, and then we sleep, and then we actually don't even need that, I don't think. So let's just comment that out for a sec, and let's just change this to kill engine. Alright, and let's restart and see what happens. Like a rock. So that's not good, obviously, in that particular state. It's probably quite hard to auto-rotate out of a dead drop, unless you're quite high. What we really want is some speed. So let's give ourselves another addAction. So we'll just copy all of this. Don't need that anymore. And we'll call this speed up. I don't want red, red, green, blue. Okay, so let's reset that to green. Pretty sure that's green. Right, now what we want to do here is set the speed of the Heli. Now I think the command for that is set velocity. Okay. Okay, so the description, it's always good to read this. Set the velocity, the speed vector of a vehicle. Units are in meters per second. Okay. Here's the example. So we'll copy that. We'll put that in here. And we'll say, actually, this is Heli 1. And what are these numbers here? So we've got 3 numbers in our array. What do they mean? So that's Heli 1, set velocity, x, y, z. X, y, z being an array. We know that. Well, I assume that is the direction. Let's find out. So we save that. Let's restart and see what happens. Okay, so we're going seems to be going east. Let's just put that again. So now we can quickly give ourselves a bit of a boost of speed. I'd like to be going faster though, so let's see if we maybe make that 80. And actually, let's make it 80 on the Y. So this should be north-south. And that should be up and down. Whoa, pretty rough, but I got there in the end. Okay, so now we've got a problem because the Heli is fucked. So how do we set the damage? I believe the command for that is set damage. Surprisingly enough. So armour, set damage, damage. I assume we want set damage 0 here, because 1 would be full damage, so we'll give ourselves another one, and we'll say okay, so we don't need this anymore, although we will want one to set the fuel back to full. So let's do that. Refuel engine. Set fuel to 1. Cool, and then the damage. We can leave that as green. So what, Heli 1, set damage 1. No, set damage 0. Let's see how that's going. Okay, let's test it out. Speed. Good. So now we're mashed up. We can hopefully fix it up. Good to go for another round. What would be ideal though is if we could set up a trigger to, oh, let me just refuel the engine first, there we go, and then engine on. So what would be good is if we could have another addAction to ping us back up into the skies again. Not that you have to wait long here, but let's try that again. Speed up. Kill engine. Alright, getting there. So the next thing I think I want to do is set height. Let's see what this is. Okay. Set an object height. So we have an array, and then we call a function. So we want the target, which is the heli, the height, which is how high we want it. You can see here this is optional and this is optional. So let's copy this. We'll put it into another addAction. And say set height 500 meters. So that's Heli 1, 500. Now because these three are optional, we can get rid of the end ones, I think. So we'll save that and test it. It would help if I put the right value in. Actually, that's quite high. Let's say 200. So we set height, we set our speed, kill our engine, and then we try. And this is kind of the core of it for me, is to try and yeah, that was not working as intended. For me, being used to the feel of having no power and using the whatever the collective and what you got left in the rotors to get yourself onto the ground safely is an essential skill, and hopefully eventually this will help me to figure out all of the different dynamics that go along with that skill. So here we've got some groups. Let's give ourselves some nameless enemies. Now we want to spawn some enemies in front of us. So how can we do that? Well, first thing we need to do is we need to know where the heli is, and that is using a command called getPos. You use this one a lot. So this command, this is example, gets the position of the player 100 meters and 45 degrees from the player's position. So we can work with that for now. Let's make that a red one. Generate enemy. .300 meters north. We'll fix that, but for now we'll just get something on the map. So we'll take this example, throw it in here. Let's see, so that's a heli one. Get pause now. 45 degrees is northeast. We want 0 degrees, which is dead north. So here all we've done is we're getting the position of the heli, and we need to put it in something. So we're going to put it in a little variable called pos. And the underscore here just tells us that it's a temporary thing. Only need it for this script. Don't need it for the bigger event. It doesn't matter too much here, but it's useful to think in economic terms, because everything that is essentially what would be called a global variable would need some kind of permanent memory allocation, and the more of those you've got, the more luggage you're carrying with you, and you want to be as light as possible. So if we only need this for this particular bit of code, then we'll keep it in a local variable container, hence the underscore. So we've got the position. Now we want to create something 100 meters north of Heli 1. So how do we do that? And Google tell us? Arma spawn enemy. Cool. So there's already a function for that. Constantly spawns enemies around the player according to an array of enemy classes. The units will try and hunt down the player. That's pretty awesome. Not quite what we wanted, so I'm going to save that for later. So if you're ever unsure, you've got the Bohemia forums, and Reddit is also useful as well. Bohemia forums is normally where I'd go to. Spawning enemy units. It's useful to look at the dates of these things as well. This game came out in 2013, so these were the types of questions that were being asked then. It's always worth checking the internet for the answers to your questions first, because this game's been around for 8 years now, so most questions have been asked. Okay, let's have a quick scan through here. This looks pretty good. Let's take this. Let's break this down. First, let's tidy it up. Okay, so the first thing you want to do in Arma terms is create a group, a designation that enemy or friendlies can be associated with. You can't just create them on their own, they need to be given a group first. And East, because this is the world we live in, things are divided into East and West. So East is a group, and we're going to call that group Group 1. So what we've got so far is we've got a position, 100 meters, let's call it 300 meters north of Heli 1. We've got a group. Now these are just things, they don't do anything at the moment, we've just got a position value and a group allocation. Now we've got another local variable that takes the group 1, it creates a group, creates a unit inside group 1, and then you can see here it is a soldier. Now create unit is a command I was interested in. There's a lot of stuff here, and this is all copied from an example, so we may not need all of this. So let's just check, what does that give us? What does that need? Create unit. So that's the command. So you have a group, create unit, type, position, markers, placement, special. Okay, type, position, markers, placement, special. Let's see. Type, position, marker, what was the other one? Something special. Placement. So, type is the string, class name of the unit. Alright, so class name is soldier. This will refer to a particular soldier type in the game. This is their unique identifier in the game. Next one, so we've got comma. Next one is the position. Now, this relates to the example that we were looking at. I don't want to use this, I just want to use the position that we've already got here. Then we've got an empty array, that's the third one. So there's no markers. Placement, special, what's special? Not really interested in that. Placement is a number radius, and a placement radius, I guess that's how far away from that area you want it to be. And do you want it to be dead on, or do you want it to be kind of near? I'm going to say 10, just give it a bit of flexibility in case there's a rock there or something. And then this line isn't necessarily needed, but it seems to generate a patrol, so we can take that out for now. Let's see if this works. Okay, so we've got enemy 300 meters north. Okay, testing. fix that. Let's that's what was shooting at us. So we'll just hover over the player and scroll down to special states, enable damage off, damage and stamina, just turn those off. Alright, let's try that again. Enemy. He's seen us. He's shooting us. So although I can't take damage, the helicopter can. Seems to be causing us a lot of trouble though. Let's create a few more. Okay, 5 more targets. There we are. More. Auto rotated, fixing up the heli, setting my height, better refuel the engine. Yeah, easy. Alright, so now we've got a working-ish system. Lots of issues with it, lots of things you can do with it. But this is a version of something that might be useful. Oops. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think we want to try and do is, instead of fixing the velocity to north, we want to fix it to whichever direction we're looking at. did not go so well. So I guess what would be useful is to have the ability to generate another heli. Oops-a-daisy. There we go. That's the end of that. Right. One last thing to do. I'm going to call it quits. Keep this quite simple. Let's see. So the way to get a class name, this is useful to know. Let's say you want to have a pop at some kind of a BTR. So you right click, log classes to clipboard. Now that is copying the string of that thing. So what we can do is create another one, generate enemy APC. Right, so that's simply exactly the same. We put it in the string area. Now we probably want it a bit further away, so let's call it 600 meters. So we'll get rid of this, we shall test. So somewhere over here. Should have been easy to shoot. I know what's happened. I've created a unit. In fact, I need to create a vehicle. Okay, bugs. I'm going to get a few of these. Expected type group expected string. Okay, what does that mean? Let's have a look at the create vehicle command. Creates an empty object of given class name. Okay. Alright, well actually, yeah, we don't even need a group, do we? It's a lot more simple. That's the example. So we've got a position. We don't need that. Don't need that. So according to the example, you have the thing, the string, create vehicle, and then the position. So let's just take that, chuck it in there. We can still call it Jeep 1, doesn't really matter what it's called because we're not doing anything with it now. That's the important thing. And then create vehicle here. Testing. And there it is. target. Totally lost my brakes. Okay. Obviously, if that was a real armed vehicle, I'd be pretty dead by now. But, you know, it's fun just practice in a non-threatening environment. I'm out of ammo. Damn. What shall we do about that? Set vehicle ammo is what we need. Sets how much ammunition compared to a full state defined by the vehicle type the vehicle has. Note that the ammo will be added only to local turrets. I'm not worried about locality. Far too scary. So vehicle name, set vehicle ammo, value. One being full. Alright. Rearm. And we're going to make this blue. Paste the example in there. This is Heli 1, isn't it? Save that and test. See, I need to practice how the weapons rearm. Not bad if I say so myself. Well, that seems like a good place to leave it. What have we done? What have we done here today? Well, we created a bunch of addActions, which is kind of brutal, but it serves a purpose. We can kill the engine, we can refuel the engine, we can get some quick turbo speed, we can fix up the heli when it's broken, we can pop a bit of altitude, we can generate a soldier, and we can generate an APC, and we can rearm. So yeah, it's really just a bunch of scroll wheel commands that does a bunch of different stuff, and there is so much more you can do with this. You can get into all kinds of like layers of complexity and fun and challenge and mini games and scores, and I'm definitely going to do a bit more on this, just to explore what you could do in terms of gamification, as my good colleague Woofer was suggesting, having some way to track things like efficiency of fire, for example, how many bullets it takes, how many rockets it takes to hit your target. For me, obviously, quite a lot. But yeah, hopefully that's useful. The code will be linked below. Drop me a comment if you have any questions, or I would say requests. I'm happy to look at anything, but my knowledge is pretty limited, so don't think for a moment I can just answer the question straight away, but I'm happy to look at anything. So yeah, that's it. I hope it's useful. I'm going to have some fun. Take it easy.